Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Lightning, in which the Sharks have lost 7-1. So the biggest loss here this season for the San Jose Sharks, at least statistically, and it didn't look like it was going to go this way in the first period, or even the second period, I would say. As in the first period, the Sharks got an early power play. They couldn't convert, and it would be the Lightning who would score first, or I should say strike first, as they get Tyler Johnson in the first just few minutes of this game. But for the rest of the first period, the Sharks, while not getting so many great chances, do control the pace of it somewhat. The Lightning had a couple of good chances in the last couple of minutes, but by the end of the first, it's only 1-0 Lightning, and so the Sharks very much still in the game. In the second period, the Sharks did get some more solid chances, actually probably better than in the first period, but Vasilevsky was there to make the save all the way. One post, I believe, was hit by the Sharks, and the Lightning would add 2 goals of their own from Killorn and Stamkos, so it was 3-0 after 40 minutes. At that point, while I didn't think the Sharks would be able to come back in this game, I wasn't thinking this game has been all too bad. It sort of felt like the game previous against the Carolina Hurricanes, where the Sharks, they had some decent chances, they just couldn't really beat Vasilevsky, and so unfortunately they're going to lose this game, but it wasn't like an October level loss where there was just complete domination by the other team. But in the third period, it began to look like that, and this might have been their worst period of the season, as the wheels just completely came off. It was a goal early from Hedman that got Jones pulled again here for the second straight game. Dell came in, he was no better, and he might have even been worse, as he has this giveaway that leads to Tyler Johnson's second goal of the game to make it 5-0. Vlasic would at least make it so that the Sharks don't get shut out for the first time this season, but then it would be Stamkos' second, as well as Verhaeghe making it just the salt on the wound with his first career NHL goal, and it would be a 7-1 final score. So the first thing to talk about would be the Sharks goaltenders here, both Jones and Dell. So Jones, of course, got the start here tonight. As it was expected, Dell would get the one tomorrow, but who knows at this point? Jones was not very good in this game. The second, third, and fourth goals, it's hard to blame him on. The third one, maybe, but it was a Stamkos shot, which was just a fantastic shot. But the first one here from Tyler Johnson, especially since this is just a few minutes into the game, you need Jones to make that save. It somehow squeaked through, and that's just sort of unacceptable at this point. So eventually Jones, as I said, gets pulled. Dell makes the misplay that leads to the Tyler Johnson goal. He can't handle the puck that leads to the Stamkos one, and he's unable to make the save on the Verhaeghe one, even if it's at that point sort of a garbage goal in the last few seconds of the game. So, as I said, a complete mystery who starts tomorrow. It was obviously going to be penciled in as Dell, but after tonight's game, Jones only played a couple of periods, so he could technically go again. Dell could still get the game, even though he didn't show that great of a performance here. It's anyone's guess. Anyone's guess is as good as mine at this point, and only DeBoer probably is just going to flip a coin in the dressing room to see which goaltender he'd like to give a chance to redeem themselves. Next, I'll talk about the Sharks' power play, because while this game did end 7-1, it had the potential to go a completely different direction with just the first 10 or so minutes of this game, as the Sharks get an early power play 15 seconds in, and eventually a double minor just a few minutes in, to get 6 minutes of power play time in the first 10 or so minutes of this game. And for the first five and a half minutes, the Sharks basically do absolutely nothing with this time. They had a couple of decent chances in the last few seconds of the double minor, but really nothing to write home about. And I mentioned the Sharks power play last game, that they changed up a couple of things, and it looked like that maybe some progress was being made, but it seems as though every time I say that this season, the Sharks just drop back to square one in the immediate game right after that. The Sharks power play has just been completely powerless. It doesn't even seem like one of those moments anymore where you can just say, oh, well, the talent will take care of things. I feel like the system needs to be changed, because it's just been so boring to watch. While they aren't doing the same things that I was mentioning a few games ago, where it's just continuously passing it up high, it's even worse now, honestly, because they can't even seem to connect that many great passes. You could see them trying to make these cross-ice passes on these power plays early in the first period, and they're just always consistently getting blocked by the Lightning, and the Lightning aren't some sort of insane penalty-killing team, and the teams that the Sharks have played against in the past 10 games, which they have not scored a power play goal in, and over 20 opportunities, those teams have not always been at the top of their game penalty kill-wise, but it just seems like the Sharks really aren't challenging them in that area. And if you take a look at when the Sharks are on the penalty kill, yes, the Sharks have the best penalty kill in the NHL, even if they gave up a couple of power play goals, but even the Sharks will occasionally give up a great chance, and it seems like so the Sharks themselves on the power play can never seem to get one for themselves. And so it seems as though no longer is this the waiting game. No longer is this something that's going to self-correct itself. The Sharks really seem to need some sort of system change to happen on their power play. But I don't know if they really have the ability to do that, at least with the current staff. Next, I will talk about Tomas Hertl. He was a player who was really lighting it up early in November, even in late October when the Sharks were still losing games. He was chaining a lot of points together in games, but then he went down with an injury, unfortunately. He missed 4 games. During that time, the Sharks ran with 7 defensemen in all 4 of those games, certainly a suboptimal setup, and so Hertl would come back into the lineup in late November, and he hasn't really looked the same since. He has a couple of assists in that Arizona game, but otherwise, it's been quite slow. He doesn't seem as willing to really get into the fights along the boards, which is really something that's pretty key to Hertl's game. And so you can definitely see that something is off. So it's a wonder if whether or not Hertl is actually 100% healthy. Was he potentially rushed back into lineup so the Sharks do not have to continue to run the suboptimal 7 defenseman shutout, 7 defenseman system? At that point, is it worth it at this point? Because it just seems as though Hertl really isn't at the top level. So maybe you actually just do continue to sit him and just wait it out to see if he can actually get back to 100%. Because the Sharks actually made this error with Erik Karlsson last season. He was playing extremely well through December and most of January, but he would eventually go down with an injury. The Sharks would leave him out for about a month before he would come back in about mid to late February. He'd play about 4 games. He would look completely awful, and then he would sit for the rest of the season until the playoffs where he would play there. And who knows if Karlsson would have been actually more healthy for the playoffs if he didn't play those 4 games, or if it didn't really have much of an impact. But it was certainly the wrong choice in that situation, and if Hertl is playing through an injury at this point, it's likely the wrong choice now as well. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action tomorrow, so they'll get right back with a chance to actually get a win here for the first time in December. They'll be against the Florida Panthers. Maybe not as high potential of a team as the Lightning, but the Panthers certainly have a ton of scoring, and so whoever it is, Jones and Dell, will have to actually have a very good redemption game if the Sharks want a chance of actually getting this first win, because with the Canucks, with the Flames, with the Golden Knights all circling, the Sharks continue to fall, a couple spots behind in this very competitive Pacific Division. Class dismissed.